Coffee hit my white suit like a dark slap. The cup was empty before I even understood she'd moved on purpose. Phones rose around us. A live stream light blinked red. The intern sobbed loud and fake, pointing at my chest as if I'd attacked her. People I pay, people I protect, stared and said nothing. A security guard paused, waiting for someone else to decide. The valet she'd screamed at kept his eyes down. Then she leaned close and whispered, "My husband is the CEO. You're done." I didn't answer. I just stood there dripping in silence, letting everyone watch. No one stepped in. Not the nurse beside the desk. Not the supervisor who glanced over and turned away. Even the security guard waited, eyes flicking toward the elevators, as if authority only moved downward. I understood that look. It meant permission mattered more than right. The intern kept talking to her phone, explaining how she'd been attacked by a jealous nobody. Her voice echoed off the marble, sharp and confident. I noticed how easily confidence grows when it's borrowed. I stood still. The coffee soaked through the fabric, heavy and cold. I thought of how many times I'd walk these halls quietly, approving budgets, signing off on equipment, trusting reports I never personally verified. I had believed systems corrected themselves, that people intervened when lines were crossed. Watching them hesitate told me otherwise. Someone finally approached. A floor manager I recognized. He didn't ask if I was okay. He asked what happened, already shaping the answer in his head. When the intern spoke first, he nodded along. When I tried to speak, he raised a hand without meaning to. A small gesture, automatic. The kind learned over time. I stopped talking. That was the moment I understood how power had been redistributed in my absence. Not formally, quietly, through signals and silence. The intern's badge swung as she cried, and I saw the confidence wasn't just arrogance. It was protection. Someone had taught her that names mattered more than conduct. She repeated it louder. "My husband is the CEO." Heads turned. That sentence worked like a master key. The floor manager's shoulders tightened. The security guard shifted his stance. A nurse reached for the intern's arm, gently, not to restrain her, but to comfort her. No one looked at me. I remembered earlier warnings I'd ignored. Delayed reports, expenses that never quite aligned. Complaints softened before reaching the board. I'd trusted my husband to manage culture while I focused on strategy. I'd believed partnership meant shared values. Standing there, stained and silent. I saw how wrong that assumption had been. The intern leaned close enough that only I could hear her breath. She smiled through tears and told me to apologize. Told me I could still leave quietly. I looked past her at the hospital logo on the wall. My father's vision reduced to a backdrop for someone else's performance. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I reached into my bag, pulled out my phone, and unlocked it. The screen felt steady in my hand. Around us, the lobby waited. Not for truth. For instruction. That pause exposed everything. It showed me how obedience spreads faster than accountability. How people learn which voices to ignore. I realized no memo could fix what had been quietly encouraged. Policies don't matter when example collapses. The intern wasn't the problem. She was the symptom. A visible result of years of tolerated shortcuts and private indulgences. I thought of meetings I'd skipped, calls I'd shortened, trust I'd extended without verification. Authority left unattended doesn't stay neutral. It drifts, and when it drifts, it finds the loudest anchor. In that lobby, noise had replaced principle. I felt no urge to correct her story yet. I wanted to see how deep the silence ran. I wanted to know who would choose comfort over integrity without being asked. This was not curiosity. It was assessment. A quiet inventory of loyalty and decay. I stood there longer than necessary, letting the moment stretch, because understanding a system requires watching it fail before anyone rushes to save it. That lesson settled heavily inside me, then quietly. I had always been easy to overlook. Not because I lacked authority, but because I rarely demanded attention. I learned early that rooms listen differently when you let others speak first. Over time, that restraint became habit. People mistook it for softness. They always do. Watching the lobby that day, I realized how often my silence had been used as permission. This was not the first time someone had spoken over me. It was simply the first time it happened in public, with witnesses who chose convenience instead of fairness. The pattern had been forming long before I boarded that flight overseas. I saw it clearly now, as if distance had sharpened the picture. Emails answered slower than before. Decisions rerouted through my husband for alignment. Invitations to meetings I once chaired replaced with summaries sent afterward. None of it alarming alone. Together, it formed a quiet displacement. I had told myself it was efficiency. I wanted him to succeed. I wanted the board to see stability. So I stepped back and called it support. In truth, I had become the buffer. The person whose presence made things smoother without being credited. Problems landed on my desk only after they were sanitized. Complaints softened. Language adjusted. By the time anything reached me, it was already framed as resolved. I believed that meant trust. It meant control. Standing there with coffee drying against my skin, I recognized the same structure at work. The intern hadn't invented her confidence. It had been rewarded somewhere. She spoke like someone who'd been protected before, like someone who'd watched consequences bend around her. I thought about the staff who'd resigned quietly, the surgeon who transferred without explanation, the accountant who asked once about a discrepancy and never followed up. I had accepted the explanations because they came from someone I trusted. That trust had insulated him, not the institution. I noticed how the intern's phone camera kept turning back to her face, how the comments scrolled faster when she mentioned status. People respond to hierarchy instinctively, even online, even without proof. The lie worked because it fit a pattern others had already accepted. I had been the expendable one in my own structure. Not pushed out, but edited. Reduced to a symbol instead of a presence. The chairwoman who traveled, the name on the letterhead. Useful for credibility, absent from consequence. It was efficient for everyone else. I remembered a dinner months earlier when someone joked about how little I was around. I smiled and let it pass. I remembered the board member who asked my husband how it felt to finally be in charge. I corrected him gently. Later, in private. It changed nothing. Patterns don't announce themselves. They repeat until you either normalize them or stop participating. I had chosen normalization. It was easier. It preserved peace. It also trained everyone else where to place me. Somewhere secondary. Somewhere optional. The intern raised her voice again. She said my kind always caused trouble. That line landed because it echoed something older. The idea that questioning authority is disruption. That silence is cooperation. That dignity belongs to those who claim it loudly. I felt something shift then. Not anger, clarity. I understood that I wasn't witnessing a betrayal in progress. I was standing inside the result of one already complete. The system had adapted around my absence and learned to function without my values. That realization did not hurt the way I expected. It steadied me. It explained the unease I'd felt boarding that flight home. The quiet tension I couldn't name. I hadn't returned to check on operations. I'd returned because something had already been breaking. The intern waited for a reaction. The lobby waited too. They expected defense or collapse. I offered neither. I held my phone and watched how quickly a lie grows when no one interrupts it. The moment crossed a line when my husband's voice came through the speaker. Not loud, not angry. Just careful. He asked what was wrong and whether this could wait. That single question told me everything I needed to know. He was choosing timing over truth. Distance over responsibility. The intern straightened when she heard him. Her smile widened. She leaned closer to the phone and spoke like someone claiming territory. She said my name with a curl of mockery. She reminded him who she was. She waited for him to confirm it. He didn't deny her. Not clearly. Not immediately. He said there must be a misunderstanding. He said he'd come down when the meeting ended. He said everyone should calm down. Each word landed heavier than the last. People heard what they wanted. The pause mattered more than the explanation. Silence always does. The intern lifted her phone higher, confident now. Staff shifted their weight. No one intervened. Not security. Not management. Not the people whose job it was to keep the space safe. I felt something close inside me. Not grief. Not rage, expectation. I had spent years hoping for partnership. Hoping he'd choose the harder right instead of the easier delay. That hope had kept me quiet longer than it should have. The intern spoke again. She said my behavior would be reported. She said I'd regret embarrassing her. She said she'd make sure I never step foot in this building again. She believed it, because someone had taught her that power bends outward. That was the boundary. Not the coffee, not the insult. The threat. Public, baseless, confident. Made in a place built to protect the vulnerable. I stopped waiting for anyone else to respond. I thanked my husband for taking the call. I told him I'd wait exactly 5 minutes. I said if he didn't arrive by then, I would handle the situation myself. I did not raise my voice. I did not explain what that meant. He arrived in 3, the elevator doors opened, and he stepped out smiling, already rehearsing an apology meant for everyone but me. His eyes scanned the crowd before landing on the intern. Recognition flickered. Panic followed. She ran to him, wrapped herself in his arm, told him she'd been attacked, told him I was unstable, told him I'd humiliated her in front of her followers. She cried loud enough for cameras. He froze. The lie had grown too large to carry. He looked at me then. Really looked. For the first time in months, I saw calculation where there used to be charm. He chose survival. He told her to stop. He said he didn't know her. He said she was mistaken. He said she was causing trouble. He said security should remove her. The switch was immediate. Her face collapsed. The crowd gasped. Phones rose higher. She screamed his name. She accused him of promises, of money, of rooms he'd paid for. She named details he couldn't deny. I didn't step in. I didn't need to. The truth was doing its work. Security arrived. So did legal. So did the board chair, who had avoided my emails for months. Everyone wanted clarity now. Everyone wanted to be seen choosing correctly. I watched my husband try to explain, try to negotiate, try to look authoritative. But authority leaks when it's built on omission. Every sentence contradicted the last. I asked one question. Quietly, I asked why funds allocated for equipment hadn't reached procurement. No one answered. Someone pulled records. Someone else went pale. That was when I stopped asking for belonging. I stopped hoping this could be repaired privately. The institution mattered more than the marriage. The people mattered more than the performance. I stepped back and let the system I'd built finally see itself. I didn't stay to watch the full collapse. I stepped away from the circle and let the machinery I had built do what it was designed to do. Compliance called external auditors. Legal locked accounts. HR suspended access. These were not dramatic acts. They were procedures.com, documented, irreversible. By evening, my husband was no longer CEO. By morning, his name was no longer on the door. By the end of the week, investigators were walking through offices he once ruled. They didn't need my testimony. He had left enough evidence behind while assuming no one would ever look closely. The intern was terminated that day. Her live stream vanished hours later. Screenshots didn't. They never do. She tried to apologize, tried to explain, tried to blame youth. I didn't respond. Accountability does not require conversation. The board met without me that night. They voted unanimously. Not out of courage, out of fear. Fear of exposure sharpens ethics quickly. They asked me to return as acting chair until a permanent structure could be restored. I agreed on one condition: transparency. No exceptions. No private fixes. The next morning, I walked the hospital floor without announcement. Nurses nodded. Doctors paused. Few thanked me quietly. One janitor smiled and said it felt different already, lighter. That mattered more than press statements. My husband called once, then twice, then through lawyers. He wanted to explain, to apologize, to reframe. I declined every request. Not out of anger, out of clarity. I had heard everything I needed to hear in the lobby. Charges followed. Financial misconduct, abuse of authority, fraud concealed as strategy. He pleaded ignorance, then stress, then betrayal by subordinates. The usual arc, none of it stuck. Systems. Remember what people hope gets forgotten. The doctor who stepped between me and chaos was asked to lead. He didn't want the role. That was why he deserved it. He accepted with one promise. Patient care first. Always. The board agreed. For once, I returned to my office weeks later. The one I'd avoided for years. I opened the window, let the city in. I sat at the desk and didn't feel the need to prove anything. That was new. The marriage ended quietly. No statements. No spectacle, just paperwork. He lost access to everything that mattered. Not because I demanded it, because the structure required it. Months passed, the hospital stabilized, metrics improved. Trust returned slowly. That kind of repair takes time. I learned to let it one afternoon. Saw the intern's name on a compliance training roster at another facility. Probationary. Watched. Limited consequences don't erase futures. They reshape them. I didn't follow my ex-husband's case closely. Distance is a form of mercy. For both sides, I've focused on work, on sleep, on silence. Sometimes I think back to the lobby, to the coffee cooling on the floor, to the moment everyone waited for someone else to act. I understand now why I didn't speak then. I was listening to myself. Power isn't volume. It's timing. It's restraint. It's knowing when to stop asking and start allowing truth to surface on its own. I still wear neutral colors, still arrive unannounced, still watch before I intervene. Not because I'm afraid, it's because observation tells you everything. The hospital stands, cleaner now, stronger. So do I. I didn't win anything that day, but I reclaimed it.